something unusual for my garden has occurred. The first time I've ever grown this particular crop successfully, and that is bananas. Look, oh my gosh, I have bananas growing in my garden, which is absolutely wild for me to say. Now, I've been attempting to grow banana trees, or I know they're not technically trees, but anyways, I've been attempting to grow bananas for a very long time. I had no expectation for these banana trees to start producing hands of bananas. I don't know exactly what it's called. I was not expecting any bananas until the springtime. Now, this is not a video about bananas, but I did want to share with you guys that my permaculture steps are coming to fruition one step at a time, which is really exciting. Now, this video is going to be more of a garden vlog because I have a lot of things to do and get done as per usual. So I feel very proud to say we have gotten a lot of headway in the garden. Now, I wasn't here for a few weeks, so my garden got massively out of control over the summertime. It's probably the worst time to have to abandon ship in your garden, but we had to move out due to renovations. So now we've been super hard at work getting our garden back to its working condition, and I feel very optimistic as of right now. So I am going to take you guys along with me, talk about some of the future garden plans, things that we have going on, and most importantly, get my hands dirty. Let's get started. First, let's discuss onions. Let's just get right on into it. So I did have big plans for my onions this year, and I still plan on trying to pull it together to get some type of good onion crop. Now, we are well into the first week of November at this point. Ideally, I would have had my onions out in the garden by the first week of October, no later than even the first day of November, but I almost never grow things in ideal situations, so there's no time like the present. I've got all of these onions I have started by seed using the dump method, where I just dumped a whole packet of seeds in here. I dumped a whole packet of seeds in here, and I have another tray too, and these onions are happy as a clam. So I'm going to get these sowed out into my garden today. The reason I have not done it yet is because I had hoped to have part of my in-ground garden established and ready to sow my onion starts in there. Now, the garden has been a little bit more of a process, a project. It's coming along. Again, I am staying optimistic and positive, not feeling discouraged yet, but as you can see, it's just not ready for directly planting things in. There are still lots of weeds. I actually just ordered a chip drop that I'm hoping gets delivered right here. They said that it should be delivered within the next 48 hours. Fingers crossed. And that chip drop is going to help us because I'm just going to spread the mulch all over. We actually have a chip drop right here too, which is just a ton of mulch. Anyways, we're going to get that chip drop spread out and then get some new soil delivered in bulk. So I have been in the process of contacting lots of different people who sell soil in bulk on Facebook Marketplace, and you would be surprised at the responses because I asked people, what is in your soil? What is it composed of? Because I had a really bad experience with buying soil in bulk before. And people just respond, I don't know. You can come look at it. I'm like, it's your soil. Like, what did you do to make this soil? So anyways, I'm trying to find a reputable source where I can source a bulk amount of soil, like 10 or 20 cubic yards for the garden too. We still have time. So if I stay on top of it now and chip away, then we will be golden by the spring garden. With that said, I don't have anywhere that I would have ideally liked to have planted my onions in the meantime. So I'm going to just plug in onions in my garden beds and make it work, because they, as far as real estate goes in the garden, are very valuable use of garden space, as opposed to something like cauliflower, which is like a one and done, takes up a ton of square footage in the garden, and it's not something that can store for long periods of time. So onions are something that we eat every single day and does not take up a ton of space. So I'm going to utilize my garden beds any way I can to plug in as many onions as I can. First, I've got to get some soil on top of some of these garden beds that need to be a little bit refreshed. Okay, I did go to Home Depot and buy a few small bags of soil, which that is expensive. Oh my gosh. So that's what I'm using today, and I'll talk about which bags I'm using because they are fairly mainstream if you're interested for your own garden. So I went ahead and I got myself some bags of Black Cow, which I know is super mainstream and available to most people all over America. And I also got a bag of Timberland soil, which is just a mix of compost, manure, and cow manure and compost mix. So the reason I picked these is because I feel like for the price per square foot, they're pretty solid. Now I will say something to consider if you are starting a large garden. That is a huge investment. Let me just say, it's not cheap always to start a big garden, especially if you're trying to do it in like big raised beds. Now, soil can be a huge factor in the amount of money that you're spending. So I would highly recommend trying to source your soil in bulk, as I just touched on before, which is what I will be doing, because it is probably about half the price of purchasing soil by the bag. Now, soil by the bag is perfectly fine if you've got a few pots that you want to fill. It's a pretty practical option. For me, I'm doing this just to get a few of these fall things going because I can't wait until I get that huge amount of soil sourced to our house. But it would not be a practical option for my big raised bed or my big in-ground garden. It'd be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So just wanted to touch on that and let you guys know there are other options if you're looking at this mounting price of the cost of soil when you go to these big box stores. Now, let me warn you that if you are the type of person who does not like to see pregnant women do physical activity while they are pregnant or anything like that, this is probably not the right channel for you. I stay very active during my pregnancy. I have no problem filling up a wheelbarrow full of mulch and listening to my body. So just wanted to put that out there because I feel like every time I do something while I'm active or while filming, people are always making comments like stay safe, take it easy, all that stuff, which yes, of course. It's my third time around and I have to lift like 40-pound kids constantly. So, you know, I got this. But I have to fill up, I've got to do a few wheelbarrows of mulch just to help with moisture retention and help fill up those beds so we're not spending all that money on soil, just filling up the whole beds with like a dense amount of soil. Now, soil's expensive, as I just said. It's about $3 to $6 a bag, about $3 a cubic square foot, or a cubic foot, and that's really expensive. Now, most of the time, if you are to buy soil in bulk, the average price is probably about like $45 or so for a cubic yard, which is a lot more than a cubic square foot. So I'm not going to fill up my whole entire beds with just this super expensive soil. Now, I used to have a ton of mushroom compost, tons of it, like literally 20 cubic yards, and we've used all of that. Now, I should have, admittedly, I've been making my own soil so I wouldn't be constantly in this situation, but here we are. I have a very busy life, and we could try again next year. So I keep telling myself, make your own soil so you don't have to keep going through this process of buying soil from someone that you're not sure what's in it, but hopefully this will be the last year. I cannot be the only person who uses their kids' garden tools. I don't know why, but they're almost always the only thing that's just like readily available. So I'm just going to spread out this layer of mulch before I start applying soil. Now this is some arugula, and I feel like arugula will just be happy in any situation. I don't even think I've ever watered this arugula, and it was the only thing that germinated. When I tried last time, I tried to plant a bunch of things in here. Like nothing worked. I don't know what happened. So I actually just dug up in that bed right next to this, and this bed, I buried our pumpkins that we carved for Halloween. So I'm just interested to see if that's going to help boost this bed. I just buried them whole. I chopped them up a little bit with a shovel. I should have filmed it, and I buried them in these beds. So I'm thinking that should give these beds a little bit extra nutrients. And I'm going to go and get that black cow and the soil to put a layer on top of here too. Typically what I've used in the past to fill all my garden beds, if you're new here, is mushroom compost. Sorry, it's a little loud. I would source the 20 cubic yards of mushroom compost from a mushroom farm, a local mushroom farm that has since, they've gone out of business. They've closed up shop. Super unfortunate, because they would source this compost to all the local gardeners around, and it was spent compost, so it wasn't fully composted. I remember way back when, where you could get like a whole truckload for like $5 before they stopped that, and then you had to buy it from vendors, and it was a lot more expensive. But it was just rich, full of mushrooms, full of manure, and it smelled to high heaven. But it was fantastic. So that's what I've always used, and this is going to be definitely a learning curve moving forward. This is a good median for the seeds. I'll spread this around just a little bit so it's covered. I'm going to put this compost cow manure on top. I don't typically incorporate topsoil in the garden. I just don't really think it's great quality unless you're using it for like flowers or something, like decorative purposes. That's just my personal experience. So this is looking great. That one's filled. I gotta get the other one set up the same way. Now I believe this is a 4x6 bed. I don't exactly remember. I am going to put my red creole onions in here. They actually look like they're doing the best out of any of them. So all I do is I just pull out a section, and they're going to look like a really intertwined mat. Do not let that freak you out if you do this method. See, all the roots are like totally combined. I'm going to pull this weed out of here. And I did this last year. I had a really good onion harvest. It was the first time I ever did it. They didn't have any type of root shock. Then I just pull the one onion from the others, and it will look like this. And I just plug them in. Then this gives me the ability to have perfect spacing at my discretion, and they're pretty tolerant to root disturbance. I assure you, based on my experience. Last year was my first time growing onions seriously at all. I mean, I had grown maybe like 1 or 2 on any given season, but it was my first time actually trying to do it right and study like what am I supposed to do and all that. I'm happy to say that we grew about 1/4 of a year's worth of onions, so about 4 or 5 months worth of onions non-stop, which was super cool to be able to enjoy, because almost every time, which is every day, we would cook, I would go, oh, this is one of our onions. So it just gave me a lot of pride and joy, and I'm hoping this year I can do something similar. I don't think I'll be able to grow anywhere near a year's worth, just because of how late in the game I'm starting, and it's just a different kind of season, and that's okay. Just because things aren't looking perfect like what you envisioned in your timeline, it doesn't mean you have to just totally get down on yourself and give up. I wonder how many I can get in here. I did not count. I will count later. So I've got all of these laid out, and I'm just gonna plug them in now. I'm just gonna go right here now, make a little hole with my hand. I'm doing this with one hand right now, and put them in the ground. They should be ready by February or March. It all depends on the weather pattern, how up and down and crazy it is. Florida is so inconsistent with the weather pattern, which is what my biggest issue was last year, why most all my onions went and started to bolt, because one week would be in the 80s, one week would be back down like the 60s or 50s, which is what we're facing right now. This week is all in the 80s. Next week is going to be like in the 60s as the high, and one of the lows is 34. And I assume that the following week will probably be back up into like the 80s again. So this is how our winters kind of go, where it's a big roller coaster. Fruiting things will sometimes do well, sometimes it won't. Sometimes we'll have 2 or 3 weeks of warm weather, and sometimes we'll have multiple weeks of cool weather. It's not even that it's hot out, it's that the sun is like blazing down in this area, and it's not working for me right now. So I got 60 onions in here, give or take, in this bed. I think it's 4x6, around a 4-inch spacing. So they seem pretty comfortable. This is my pepper garden. A huge goal of mine was, like I told myself, if you don't get to anything else, at the very least get to growing a little pepper garden in pots for the winter time. Peppers overwinter very easily, and they're super hardy. They last for years. It buys you so much time in the spring, because then you have these mature pepper plants that are just ready to go. Now, I don't have any real expectations of these pepper plants producing peppers through the winter time. I don't really care if they do or don't. I just want to keep them alive by the time it's spring. So I'm just going to get all these onions in here, because these are pretty big pots, and there should definitely be enough room for an onion or 2 to keep my peppers happy through the winter. So onions, peppers, slash some onions, and then this will be another onion bed. I will not be planting them out today, because it's just like the blazing sun. I'm going to work in different parts of the garden that isn't as sunny. These are my these are my Texas grano onions, which is a super solid short day variety. I just wanted to show you guys that. So I do plan on getting these in here probably later today, once the sun isn't like full blast right now, and make it easier for me to work in the garden. It's like shadier over here. I wanted to show you guys my tomatoes. These are my winter tomatoes. I always try to get a few winter tomatoes, and I still have some onions in my hands that I need to plug in. But I always try to get some winter tomatoes growing, because it always surprises me how well they do, or not. But in Florida, it's just a toss-up. I've had really great success with like cherry tomato varieties or smaller varieties. These are some bigger beefsteak varieties. I don't typically grow the big beefsteak options in the wintertime, so this is kind of an experiment for me. But look at how healthy, hold on, let me get this onion in here. Look at how healthy these plants are. These get so much shade, which is crazy to me because of my banana trees. They get like half the amount of sun a normal tomato plant would get, and they are just rich, super green and healthy plants. What I've been doing is I fertilize my plants with Alaskan fish fertilizer. I don't use any type of synthetic fertilizer in my garden. I do that about once a month, and these plants are really, really happy. And I just think it's really cool because they're in partial shade right now. After about like noon, I would say, they don't really get much more sun after that. What I plan to do with the rest of these beds is get my brassicas in, and I do have some that are ready to go right now. Ooh, okay, I'm like starting to hit a wall. I always get so much energy at the beginning of the day, especially when I do start gardening. And I'm like, I can do all this. I can be out here for hours, and then it hits me. So I'm starting to get a little bit tired. This is some cabbage that I just labeled as cabbage, which I don't know why I would do that because I have so many different varieties. I'm going to take a guess, and I'm going to say that this is the Copenhagen cabbage. What I do with most of my plants now, just it was born out of a matter of just time, is I just dump seeds in a tray that has some drainage, and I just fish them out. Unless they are the variety that would have like a taproot system, like carrots, they do not do well with that method, for example. But if it doesn't have a taproot system, I find that it works really well. So I'm gonna plug in just a few of these cabbages in here. Now I'm gonna give these a really good amount of space away from my onions. I have one row of onions in here, and I have a row of peppers as well next to my tomatoes, which will grow up vertically. So I don't want to shade them because these cabbage plants can get really big sometimes. It's always really wild to me whenever I go to Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that, and I see that these starts are like $2 or $3 a pop for a plant about this size, just a few weeks old, when a head of cabbage at the grocery store, organic, would be about that price or less. So starting things from seed is much more economical. You're gonna get so many, and it's really not hard. If you're intimidated to grow things from seed, don't be intimidated. It's really affordable and it's really easy. Let's see, we'll just do 4 in this bed. Then I'm gonna do some kale next to that. Here is my kale. They definitely aren't looking too great. They need to come out of here. But these will explode right away as soon as I get them planted. I like to have my kale kind of off to the side always because they get to be huge plants and they last a really long time for me historically. Whew. Okay, I'm getting these tomatoes trellised. I just have this little wrappy trellis. Now going into the spring, I want one of my projects to be building like a kind of permanent wooden structure for the tomatoes that looks appealing as well. The single string method was fine with, if you haven't seen that video, I did a single string method that I saw from another creator with a T-post and electrical conduit. It worked just fine. I did want something that was less maintenance. I don't want to damage this tomato. Overall, going into the spring, and something that looked more appealing, because a big part of gardening is enjoying your surroundings, enjoying being out here, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. Your garden should not be a place that just looks like that brings you down emotionally. So that's, for me personally, I don't want something that's going to continue to be high maintenance, which was kind of what those that particular tomato trellis method was, although it was very affordable and you could make a huge trellis for a very low cost. So I would recommend it for that. I don't remember what I planted where. I'd have to go back in the video because I didn't have my markers. I know I planted some vintage wine tomatoes, some Amish paste tomatoes. I have a bunch of, like a whole row of San Marzano, some German Johnson, I think an Ivan tomato. So a few different larger varieties. I did want to grow I was trying to grow the sweetie tomatoes, the little tiny varieties, but those plants just didn't work out. If you've been watching my videos, you might remember that I was attempting to grow cucumbers. They just got attacked to no end. The pest pressure was still so present. So I may, because I know we have just a few more days of warmer temperatures before those really cold temperatures come along, I might try to gamble with just germinating a few cucumber seeds, having them hopefully make it through that cold week and possibly grow through the winter time. So we'll see. I mean, the Florida or zone 9 winter, at least where I live, it would amaze you what you can pull off, and I just keep it going. I just keep trying anything. So I'll give you guys some garden updates on what's going on. Now, I planted tomatoes, 6 on each side of my cattle panel tunnel. This is 2 back-to-back cattle panel arches. And then in between them, I have planted some pepper plants I just didn't have the heart to get rid of. Those are doing fine. I added some more compost and soil to make them happier because at first they weren't happy. But what is super cool is my pumpkin plant, mystery squash plant that's growing, that I will be trellising upwards because I didn't plant it. And if you know me historically, it seems as though the only plants I can grow, the only type of winter squash I can typically grow successfully, is a volunteer that has planted itself. It is so happy, this plant. And of course right now is a low pest pressure time. So that'll be really fun, having all of these tomatoes here on the bottom, directly in the ground with a pumpkin. Now, I also have, ooh, what is it? Oh, it's a moth. Ugh. This is like a little stinker. Pest. Ah! Okay. That thing is trying to lay eggs and mess with my lima beans. All right, right here we have lima beans growing really happy. We've got the little flowers and everything in here. That's gonna be awesome to have lima beans, because I've never grown lima beans successfully. So that's a really happy area. And I'm just gonna start plugging in more and more things. I have currently trays of spinach growing. I'm going to start succession planting those and just load up trays back to back and densely plant them. I've got cauliflower, broccoli, I have more cabbage growing, basil, and cilantro, and some other things. But I have something that's even cooler I plan on starting soon. Now, admittedly, I wish that I would have done a better job years ago getting some of my fruit trees and things like that going. Because now that I'm having fruit trees, like my papayas are growing well, my bananas are growing well, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to get everything growing. So that is what I'm going to start to try to dig into really soon. I do need my husband's help with that because it's just a lot, kind of like digging in the ground, pregnant like that. So I'm just gonna have him do all that, help me with planting all my fruit trees in the ground. But I have ordered 100 bare root strawberry plants, just as I did last year. Last year was a really cool learning experience with that. It was the first time I ever attempted to grow bare root strawberry plants in general, and it was the first time I've ever grown that many strawberries. Now, I didn't really get to see it come to fruition because we had to move out during about the time where they would have really started to produce. So I don't even know. I mean, we harvested some strawberries, but we didn't have like a mega harvest. You know, we just weren't here. The bunnies probably enjoyed most of the strawberries. So I ordered all my bare roots. I did it later last year, I think around like maybe January or February I got them started. This year I'm going to start them in November and just have them be these really robust and healthy plants ready to go into the ground. So I'm really excited about that. I want to approach it differently, do my research more on strawberries, on like the best type of environment to give them to have a great return on investment, which by the way, the average bare root strawberry I would say is like around $1 each. I will include links on Amazon to the ones that I purchased because they do come out to be really affordable. Because if you went to the store, it's going to be, you know, $7, $8, $15 for one strawberry plant, and they're really, really easy to grow. So I have strawberries on my mind. That's going to be one of the next things I get into the ground after we get that's going to be the first thing that we get into the ground when we get that in-ground no dig area all rehabilitated. I also want to order my blackberries first and foremost. So I'm looking on Etsy right now for some blackberry varieties that I think would do well in my climate, because not all of them do well with such little frost exposure. So I'm going to really try to dive into that. I know I've talked about this before, but that's just my goal, because I'm seeing these bananas, I'm seeing those papayas, and I want to see more. I want to see some peaches and some olives and all different types of exotic cool things that I can grow. I attempted to grow the cacao trees before, and I just didn't get them in the ground soon enough because I didn't realize that the seeds came germinated. So I ordered more cacao seeds that are already germinated, and I'm going to plant them as soon as they come, as soon as I get that shipment, so I can have some trees to make my own chocolate. Wouldn't that be just like absolutely fantastic? So I do have lots of plans going into the spring on top of having a baby come. So I am working with a similar timeline that I did with my daughter when I was pregnant with her. This baby is due almost the exact same time as her, to the day. So what I did with that particular garden is I got really strategic with my time. I started things super early in January, and I just was really regimented with, like, we start our seeds now, we put our seeds in the ground at this time, we put our transplants in the ground at this time, we get the beds, and I got everything. The whole garden was just like totally flourishing by the time I gave birth to her in early March. So I'm attempting to do that again this year. That way, when I have the baby, all I have to worry about is just walking around the garden and harvesting and enjoying all of the hard work that went into it, as opposed to trying to race around and get the garden going. After the baby's here, I just don't know how I don't think I could do that. So I'm really going to try to hit it hard and be more scheduled and regimented this year with the garden. Now that is pretty much all I can handle today. I know I didn't get to too much today. I'm going to start to try to get out here earlier so that the sun isn't so intense and it's a little bit easier on me. But I do appreciate you guys watching and hanging out with me and following along on the journey as I hopefully grow my garden and I continue to grow as well over the next few months. My name is Shelby, and until next time, bye.